Take a look at this transition group built-in component. Transition group is a built-in component designed for animating the insertion, removal, and other change of elements or components that are rendered in a list. So that would mean, for example, with a v-for loop. Differences from transition. Transition group supports the same props, CSS transition classes, and JavaScript hook listeners as transition. Alright, that makes things nice. With the following differences. By default, it doesn't render a wrapper element, but you can specify an element to be rendered with the tag prop. Transition modes are not available because we are no longer alternating between mutually exclusive elements. And transition modes being, the way in which the elements transition. The out, in out, and all that. Like the way the elements switch. This transition between two elements. Alright. So these are not available for transition group. Then the elements inside are always required to have a unique key attribute. And that is so that Vue can actually identify what element is what. CSS transition classes will be applied to individual elements in the list, not to the group container itself. Alright, when used in DOM templates, it should be referenced as transition-group. Sure. Enter and leave transitions. Here is an example of applying enter leave transitions to a v-for list using transition group. We have our transition group component, built-in component. Built-in component means you don't have to import it. You can use it in Vue, in any template, in any component by default. Then you give it a name list, and there it has a tag UL that means, as we have seen before, that well, without the tag, this transition group element component will not render anything. It will just do something to the child items. But if we give it a tag UL, then we're telling it to actually render a UL in place. And then we have a list of items with a v-for which loops over items and gives each item a key. And then we have the transition classes associated with the name list. So if it's list enter active, list leave active. And these are the, so to say, the states in which the transition is taking place. We set the transition to all properties of half a second and then is mode, I think it's called this thing, or function. And then we have list enter from and to, so the initial state and the final state, which is just opacity 0 and move the elements in the x-axis. And let's say we can here have two buttons, one to add a random index and this to remove a random index. Right? At random, let's say. Yeah, that means we add a random new number at a random index, and then that means remove one. So the important thing is that here you actually see the transition. When we click this add random index button, we are transitioning in. So it's the enter transition, and the enter transition starts from opacity 0, and the y and the x-axis apparently shifted with the element shifted to the right side. So that's the positive direction, is the right direction. Transition lasts half a second, and then after it's finished, the opacity is 1 and the transform translate text is 0. So that's what's happening here. And then the remove at random index is the opposite. It's just the reverse transition. So anyway, that's what a transition group is for. To apply transitions to elements inside a list. Move transitions. The above demo has some obvious flaws. When an item is inserted or removed, its surrounding items instantly jump into place instead of moving smoothly. We can fix this by adding a few additional CSS rules. Yet the other numbers jump. As you can see, transition finishes, then it jumps. So we can add a few additional CSS rules, which is list move and list leave active. Apparently, this move or just applies this transition, and it applies transition to moving elements. And then we have list leave active. Let's see, list leave active means ensure leaving items are taken out of layout flow so that moving animations can be calculated correctly. So that's the period in which the element that leaves. When the element leaves, while the transition is taking place, the position of the element will be absolute. And the reason why it's done is because that way surrounding elements can begin moving due to the absence of this element. Position absolute removes the element from the normal flow of the page and positions it like the rest of elements ignore the element as if it was not there, basically. And now what we're going to see is that the elements, instead of jumping when an element is added or removed, they transition smoothly, like so. You see? That's way nicer. And we can even shuffle. Nice. Let's say, is this a link to the... Oh, this is an example. Why is it not in the playground? Interesting. Here we have our setup with our get initial items, insert, reset, shuffle, and remove. And then we have our template and some styles. In the template, we have these 3 buttons on top. In here, we have the transition group with the items. Each item has a on-click listener, which triggers a remove item function. In the transition group, we have the name fade, the class container, and the items. The children have class item and key item. And then the transitions are, well, first of all, we have the classes, container and item with some styles, whatever. Then we have this, first of all, fade, enter, active, and leave active, which define how the transition happens. Then we also have this class fade move to avoid the jumping. And this move thing is built-in. Apparently, it's a built-in thing from the transition group. We don't have to like give the fade move class to anything here. Then we have the fade enter from and fade leave to, which define the very initial state and ending state. So the opacity 0, transform, positions the elements differently. And then we have a fade leave active, which has position absolute, as we have seen before, to make the surrounding elements move smoothly when an element is added or removed. And then let's take a look at the insert. Let's say, first of all, we have the get initial items, which is a function that returns an array. Sure. Then we have some items which are a reactive property, which have the value returned by this function, so this array. And then we have an ID, which is the length of the items array plus 1, which means that here basically it's a way to control the number of the element that we are adding or subtracting, I think. So if we take a look at the insert function, which is triggered by the inserted random index button, it gets a random number, which is it gets a random index from 1 to 5. No, actually it gets a random index from 0 to 4. 0 up to 4, matter round. 0 up to 5 actually. it's from 0 up to 5 because we are rounding up. We are rounding. That means that this thing can be from 0 to 4.999999, and if it's 0, this math round will be round to 0, but if it's 4.9, this math round will round to 5. So this goes from 0 to 5, or not goes, but can have a value from 0 to 5, an integer value on insert. So here, basically, long story short, we pick the index in which to insert the new element, a random index, which can be from before the 1 to after the 5. And then we have adding, wait, this is 1, this is 0. We are adding the value of I in the ID, well, whatever this thing does, it adds the value in the string, basically, in the right position. Then we have a function reset, which sets the initial value, which sets this to the initial value. Then we have shuffle, which applies a shuffle function probably from Lodash, which is imported. It's not imported. I know it's here. Exactly, Lodash dash ES, I guess for ES modules. We shuffle the items randomly, and then we have a function that removes an item from one index, and we can pass in the item index here, and then we see things transition smoothly. We can shuffle them, we can add a crap ton of values here, shuffle everything randomly, reset, remove values. Let's remove. Oh, it actually keeps on increasing the number. Well, that's fine. So that's the example. I don't feel I have a good day for explaining things though. I feel cranky. Let's go. Let's follow through. We are almost done with this. Staggering list transitions. By communicating with JavaScript transitions through data attributes, it's also possible to stagger transitions in a list. First, we render the index of an item as a data attribute on the DOM element. So here we have a list items, and then we have a data attribute with a value index. Data index with value index, and this index is just the index of the array. Then, in JavaScript hooks, we animate the element with a delay based on the data attribute. So we have a delay. Well, wait, we have a function on enter, which is called by the enter hook on the transition group. And then this on enter takes an element as done as input, and it runs this function. This is a green, what was that again? This is an external library for animations, which has a delay, which is a function of the dataset index value times 0.15. So that's gonna actually do, let's see. This is for, this is a search box, I see. Wait. How Jackie Chan. What does this even do? Okay, we search what I don't think we are meant to see anything here anyway. We search, the point is we search whatever here. Wait, what? Oh my god. Because capitals don't work. Alright. Okay, so that actually works. Let's start again. Let's type something that is not even here, and we see that the delay, so the first element to disappear is the firstly, then after Jackie Chan and so on, the further down it's in the list, the more delayed the animation is. And that's what is happening here, which is very nice. I won't go into the example. It's relatively straightforward. The whole thing is controlled by this data index and this line over here. Actually, let's indeed go to the playground. Here we see the same behavior, and then if we go here and remove the delay or comment it out, there's no delay here, and then wait, there is delay. What is even happening here? Let's get rid of this thing. Because we have also this one. Now they all disappear and show up at the same time because we remove that delay. Now, so we are done with the transition group. Next is gonna be keep alive in the next video.